Smith hand. There's Smith hand. Hi. Look, I have hands again. Both of them. 2 hands. 4. 2. 4. Hello and welcome. This is Brownie Rose Smith, live from the Forbidden Library. And we're back. The 3D model returns. I couldn't 3D while we were a potato. So now I can. Yeah. The cute summer outfit is back. The colored nails. The ring. Good stuff. 2 hands perfect for slapping. Hello everyone, hello novel-sized fandom, straight out in the mean streets of Cheshire East. It's Brownie Rose Smith. Heck yeah. Hello Mander, welcome. Hi Luke, thank you for stopping by. I will have a wonderful stream. You hate every character in Wuthering Heights. I've never read this book. This was on recommendation, so it should be interesting. I remember reading this in AP Literature for Senior. It was one of the only books that held my attention. 30 battles, teens. And yes, there is a spelling mistake in the title, but that'd be effort to change it. Yeah, 3D Brownie is back and can give you all the finger guns. P. Finger guns. Finger gun. Yes, I know. I mean, I guess the adventuring outfit is a good fall outfit, but I've basically taken the 2 outfits that you guys picked from my subathon, and they're basically my standard 3D outfits now. Hello, Double Hop. Welcome. Hello, Boris. Did my elbow just do 360 then? I read this one last year and absolutely loved it. I'm glad it's so well known, because I literally never heard of it until you guys told me. Also, I'm sorry, I forgot to put the link to my game in the chat, in case anyone wants it. So let me just quickly throw that in there and pin it. I made a game. Because I'm just going to be pushing this for a little while until, I don't know, until I get bored. Until I get bored of marketing it. Let me just put it in the thing. I made a game. Put it in Twitch as well. I forgot to do it before the stream, so apologies. Manually to the end of stream. Yeah. Okay, cool. Right, first things first. As per usual, well, as I've been trying to do every Sunday, because of that, otherwise I don't update this number. We're going to update the 1,000 book spreadsheet. It's actually saved as 100 books because I made this spreadsheet when we hit 100 books to actually try keep track of everything we've been doing. So let's quickly add some stuff to this before we start. So 172. No, that's not what's supposed to go there. It's supposed to go down here. 172. We've got my game, because it was a lot of writing, so I get to add it. Little Red and the Baba Yaga. Hi, Brownie. Never been to one of these reading streams before, but looking forward to it. You have a wonderful voice. Well, this is somewhat of an ASMR, I suppose, but it's 18th century literature rather than whispering in your ear. I hope you enjoy. Organization snore. Doing spreadsheets not excite you. I love a spreadsheet. This is the best spreadsheet in the world. It's a game, technically, and it was by myself, Brownie Rose Smith, and it is in fact standalone. And then, what is this spreadsheet? So you see that bit in down there where it says 1,000 books to 9,829 books till freedom. So, in my lore as Vtuber, I have fallen into the Forbidden Library and I am not allowed to leave until I have read 10,000 books. This spreadsheet is how I'm keeping track of those 10,000 books. Those 10,000 books, as you can see, they can be novels, they can be short stories, they can be games with a lot of writing, they can be webtoons, SCPs, Pokemon OC trading cards. As long as it's written with love, it can go in the spreadsheet. So I'm just adding a few bits to the spreadsheet that I have read this week, and then I will update the number, and then we will get to the book. I promise. Spreadsheets are wonderful things. They are. Listen to classical English literature. Also, inserts Limbus Company reference because of Wuthering Heights. I feel like any literature has a Limbus reference. So, 173. It is! It's going to be a horrifically long journey. But we're nearly at 200 already. So, I read another 20 chapters. So, when it comes to webtoons, obviously because the chapters are very small, I get to add an entry to this every 20 chapters. So I've read another 20 chapters of Leveling Up My Husband. And that's been fun. Not that great, in all honesty, but because I can read it for free and I can binge it and the art is really pretty, I'm just like, I'm gonna read it anyway. And I've read another 20 chapters of Charming Duke of the North. Now I love this one. The main man is so pretty, and the main woman is so pretty, and there's a plot going on about uncovering who murdered his last fiance, so that adds a little bit of tasty drama. I love it. So good. Cool. Save. We're done. So it's 174 we're on. Let's close that up. Let's update my books until freedom. Ba, 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 ba. So that was 3 I added, so that'll take us down to 6 there. Ba, 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 ba. Progress! Righto. Book. The only thing I know about this book is the Gutenberg description and you guys recommending it. So no spoilers, okay? Hey babe, want to come back to my place and see a massive spreadsheet? Let's get those finger guns out. Oh hey, did you read the Batman web series? I didn't know you were a DC fan. Yes, so my fiance is really into Batman and the Robins and the Bat family, and he's kind of dragged me along for the ride. I very much like Dick Grayson. I think he's the goodest boy. Disco Wing's wonderful. So I know something of it, and it is on my list. I'm not up to date on it whatsoever. I'm quite far behind, but I have enjoyed reading that. Part of me doesn't want you to reach 10k books, but we can go into like another arc of my story at that point. The potential. No, I don't know how long it'll take anyway. It's been nearly 2 years of streaming. It's been over 2 years of streaming now. And we're only just getting to 200. And that's only because I've really started keeping track now. Yes, Gutenberg, a wonderful place to get free classic books. If you ever are in need, you don't need to go buy a copy from Amazon where someone's just ripped it and put it a picture and then self-published it. Then you can get it for free. Just get it for free. Free literature, free knowledge. We love it. Don't worry, Lucas. Brady will find a way to have another sentence added by the Guardian of the Forbidden Library. Something will happen. I don't know what yet. We've got 9,000 books before I find out. Let's see, Partner's getting there. Yes, we've done that a lot. I don't know how much I've gotten him into now I think about it. I've probably gotten him further into Bleach than he ever was. And he knows far too much about Sonic than he ever should for the amount of Sonic games he's actually played. But he's gotten me into obviously Batman and that lot. And Gundam. Gundam's also his fault. But anyway, shall we read a book? I think we should read a book. Let's get on with it. Let's get on with the stream. Project Gutenberg, wonderful place. Many, many rules and things. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Chapter 1. Actually, no, I'm going to have a bit more of my tea first. Okay. 1801. I have just returned from a visit to my landlord, the solitary neighbour that I shall be troubled with. This is certainly a beautiful country. In all England, I do not believe... Country. I never know which one they're doing. Emily Brontosaurus. Yes, the tea game of fuel is very important. In all England, I do not believe I could have fixed on a situation so completely removed from the stir of society. A perfect misanthropist, Heaven, and Mr. Heathcliff and I are such a suitable pair to divide the desolation between us. A capital fellow! He little imagined how my heart warmed towards him when I beheld his black eyes withdrawn so suspiciously under their brows. As I rode up, and when his fingers sheltered themselves with a jealous resolution still further in his waistcoat, I announced my name. "Mr. Heathcliff," said I. A nod was the answer. "Mr. Lockwood. Your new tenant, sir. I do myself the honour of calling as soon as possible after my arrival, to express the hope that I shall not inconvenience you by my perseverance in soliciting the occupation of Thrushcross Grange." Thrushcross. Thrushcross. That is going to be a word I'm going to trip over several thousand times. "I heard yesterday you had some thoughts. Thrushcross. I just practiced it 500 times. This is going to be a thing. "Thrushcross Grange is my own, sir," he interrupted, wincing. "I should not allow anyone to inconvenience me. If I could hinder it, walk in." Say it 5 times fast. Thrushcross, 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 Thrushcross. Kinda. Thrushcross, quash, quash, quash. We found the literal worst word to say in the whole English language. Thrushcross. Woe to anyone who tries to read this when their second language is English. I can barely say it once. Worcestershire sauce. I can normally say that just fine. But this is throwing me off. Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire sauce. Well, yeah, I'm not an eldritch being, at least. According to the rules of Sucker for Love, I am not an eldritch being, apparently. The walk-in was uttered with closed teeth and expressed the sentiment, "Go to the deuce." Even the gate over which he leaned manifested no sympathizing movement to the woods, and I think that circumstances determined me to accept the invitation. I felt interested in a man who seemed more exaggeratedly reserved than myself. "You do not speak the English?" The briny, I know, is an eldritch idiom. Maybe I will be by the time the 10,000 books is done. It'll make me go insane and I'll become an eldritch being. That makes other people go insane by watching me. Ha ha! You would be the fools! When he saw my horse's breast fairly pushing the barrier, he did put out his hand to unchain it, and then suddenly proceeded up the causeway, calling as we entered the court, "Joseph, take Mr. Lockwood's horse and bring him up some wine." Here we have the whole establishment of domestics, I suppose, was the reflection suggested by his compound order. No wonder the grass grows up between the flags, and cattle are the only hedge cutters. Very cute, the eldritch demon. Gladly become a fool dancing in midair. Joseph was an elderly, nay, an old man, very old, perhaps though hale and swiny. Sweeney? "The Lord help us," he soliloquized in an undertone of peevish displeasure. I could see why they made you read this in school. So many big words. looking meantime in my face so sourly that I charitably conjectured he must have need of divine aid to digest his dinner, and his pious ejaculation had no reference to my unexpected advent. Damn. I can see why these characters are disliked. They're very mean to each other. Wuthering Heights is the name of Mr. Heathcliff's... I cannot... Oh my god. Wuthering Heights is the name of Mr. Heathcliff's dwelling. Wuthering being a significant provincial adjective describing the atmosphere tumult to which its station is exposed in stormy weather. Pure bracing ventilation they must have up there at all times, indeed. We haven't even gotten to the mean stuff yet. That was already pretty mean. He's divine intervention to digest his dinner. That's one way of saying someone looks a bit skinny and near the grave. Oh god. Sorry, my brain went to a bad place. I was like, that's kind of like my granddad at the moment. Oh lordy. Anyway, one may guess the power of the north wind blowing over the edge by the excessive slant of a few stunts firs at the end of the house, and by a range of gaunt thorns all stretching their limbs one way, as if craving alms of the sun. Happily the architect had foresight to build it stronger. The narrow windows are deeply set in the walls, and the corners defended with large jutting stones. Before passing the threshold, I paused to admire a quantity of grotesque carving lavished over the front, and especially about the principal door, above which, among a wilderness of crumbling griffins and shameless little boys, I detected the date 1500 and the name Hareton Earnshaw. I would have made a few comments and requested a short history of the place from the surly owner, but his attitude at the door appeared to demand my speedy entrance, or complete departure. I had no desire to aggravate his impatience previous to inspecting the penetralium. Strap in, folks, this is going to be an adventure in the English language. It is. One step brought us into the family sitting room, without any introductory lobby or passage. They call it here the house, preeminently. It includes the kitchen and parlour generally, but I believe at Wuthering Heights the kitchen is forced to retreat altogether into another quarter. At least I distinguished a chatter of tongues and a clatter of culinary utensils deep within, and I observed no sign of roasting, boiling, or baking about the huge fireplace, nor any glitter of copper saucepans and tin colanders on the walls. One end, indeed, reflected splendidly both light and heat from the ranks of immense pewter dishes, interspersed with silver jugs and tankards towering row after row on the vast oak dresser to the very roof. The latter had been underdrawn. Its entire anatomy lay bare to an inquiring eye, except where the frame of wood laden with oatcakes and clusters of legs of beef, mutton, and ham concealed it. Above the chimney were sundry villainous old guns, and a couple of horse pistols, and, by the way of ornament, 3 gaudy painted canisters disposed. The floor was of smooth white stone, the chairs high-backed, primitive structures painted green, 1 or 2 heavy black ones lurking in the shade. In an arch under the dresser reposed a huge liver-coloured... Has it been more than a few minutes? Okay, cool, I can swear. Bitch! Pointer. Surrounded by a swarm of squealing puppies and other dogs haunted other recesses. The apartment and furniture would have been nothing extraordinary as belonging to a homely northern farmer, with a stubborn countenance and stalwart limbs set out to advantage in knee breeches and gaiters. Such an individual seated in his armchair, his mug of ale frothing on the round table before him, is to be seen in any circuit of 5 or 6 miles among these hills, if you go at the right time after dinner. But Mr. Heathcliff forms a singular contrast to his abode and style of living. He is a dark-skinned gipsy in aspect, in dress and manners a gentleman. That is, as much a gentleman as many a country squire, rather slovenly perhaps, yet not looking amiss with his negligence, because he has an erect and handsome figure, and rather morose. I always get a bit nervous when there's a character of colour in books this old. Just a little bit nervous. So if you go back a very long time on this channel, you'll see that we started reading a book called something Max and his motorbike. It was supposed to be about like upcoming technologies, but then like a character of color came in and the bad words started coming in, and I had to like stop reading that book instantly. I guess because you guys recommended this, I'm safely assuming there's nothing like that in this book, but I can't help but get a little bit nervous when a book has a person of color and it's this old. Bitch Pointer was the name we gave my science teacher in middle school. Possibly some people might suspect him of a degree of underbred pride. I have a sympathetic chord within that tells me it is nothing of... Yeah, as a reader of old pulp stories, a King Kera up there. Yeah, and I need to be careful about what I put on this channel. Oh boy, later in this page. Oh no. Oh no, guys, we might have to skip over some things if there's some nasty language. Obviously we can swear, but there's some things I cannot say. The sword. I know by instinct his reserve springs from an aversion to showy displays of feeling, to manifestations of mutual kindliness. He'll love and hate equally under cover, and esteem it a species of impertinence, to be loved or hated again. No, I'm running on too fast. I bestow my attributes over liberally on him. Mr. Heathcliff may have entirely dismissed reasons for keeping his hand out of the way when he meets a would-be acquaintance, to those which actuate me. Actuate. Classic literature can get a little dicey. Because back then they didn't care. Let me hope my constitution is almost peculiar. My dear mother used to say I should have a comfortable new home, and only last summer I proved myself perfectly unworthy of one. While enjoying a month of fine weather at the sea coast, I was thrown into the company of a most fascinating creature, a real goddess in my eyes, as long as she took no notice of me. I never told my love vocally. Still, if looks have language, the merest idiot might have guessed I was over head and ears. Overhead, is that ye old head over heels? She understood me at last, and looked a return. She, sweetest of all imaginable looks. And what did I do? I confessed it with shame, shrunk icily into myself like a snail, and every glance retired colder and farther, till finally the poor innocent was led to doubt her own senses, and overwhelmed with confusion at her supposed mistake, persuaded her mamma to decamp. By this curious turn of disposition, I have gained the reputation of deliberate heartlessness. How undeserved, I alone can appreciate. I took a seat at the end of the hearthstone opposite that towards which my landlord advanced, and filled up an interval of silence by attempting to caress the canine mother, who had left her nursery, and was sneaking wolfishly to the back of my legs, her lip curled up, and her white teeth watering for a snatch. My caress provoked a long guttural gnaw. Okay, so the explanation being head over heels is you head always over your heels. I don't know. Head over heels. I'm not sure what the etymology behind head over heels is. We should check, because that's always a fun part of streaming these books. Etymology of head over heels. La 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 la. We got a bit of Reddit etymology. Reddit's never wrong, right? Head over heels just means you're into your legs, maybe. Well, you'll be happy not to know it didn't start head over heels. I found a bunch of sources that say it's from the 13th century, but it seems to come into print in the 17th. Both the vowels have a hierarchy between them. It comes from a Latin phrase, potentially, but it's unclear to me if it's a literal translation. The Latin is per caput pescere. I mean, people existed, so heels existed. The phrase head over heels seems more easily to suggest the mental image of a non-missionary position. So it may reflect sexual positions, potentially, according to this. I don't know. I didn't find a very good answer in my Google search. If anyone finds one better, feel free to say it in chat. You'd better leave the dog alone, growled Mr. Heathcliff in unison, checking fiercer demonstrations with a punch of his foot. She's not accustomed to be spoiled, not kept for a pet. Then, striding to a side door, he shouted again, "Joseph!" That's what makes these streams special. These fun language tangents. They're fun. They're great. Joseph mumbled indistinctly in the depths of the cellar, but gave no indication of ascending, so his master dived down to him, leaving me vis-a-vis the ruffianly bitch and a pair of grim, shaggy sheepdogs, who shared with her a jealous guardianship over all my movements. So there's 3 not very friendly dogs so far. Not anxious to come in contact with their fangs, I sat still, but imagining they would scarcely understand tactic insults, I unfortunately indulged in winking and making faces at the trio, and some turn of my physiognomy so irritated Madam that she suddenly broke into a fury and leapt on my knees. I flung her back and hesitated to interpose the table between us. She proceeded, aroused the whole hive. 6 4-footed fiends of various sizes and ages issued from hidden dens and common centres. I felt my heels, coat laps, peculiar subjects of assault, and parrying off the larger combatants as effectively as I could. With the poker, I was constrained to demand aloud assistance from some of the household in re-establishing peace. So we got attacked by dogs. Yes, Lucas, that seems to be what it was, but I really don't think it is. My fiance just chimed in that it switched from heels over head, as in like a somersault, but it switched because it didn't flow when you said it. Because heels over head makes sense, because to me in my brain that would be like, yes, a somersault, but also it's the idea that you're in love, so your feet take action before your mind does, so heels over head, feet over head, action over thought. That's where my brain would go, but that is a better explanation than what I had. Also, something about another expression involving tail over head, which is suggested like rolling. I see. It's all about falling and rolling. Barely 10 minutes in and getting attacked by dogs. I'm so in love with you, so I'm gonna do a sick flip. Well, yeah, don't you just want to do a flip when you're in love? Just want to do a flip. Wonderful. Mr. Heathcliff and his man climbed the cellar steps with vexatious phlegm. Phlegm! I don't think they moved 1 second faster than usual, though the hearth was an absolute tempest of worrying and yelping. Happily, an inhabitant of the kitchen made more dispatch. A lusty dame, oh my! A lusty dame with tucked up gown, bare arms, my God! And fire-flushed cheeks rushed into the midst of us, flourishing a frying pan and using that weapon, and her tongue to such purpose, oh my, that the storm subsided magically, and she only remained heaving like a sea after high wind when her master entered the scene. I know, I didn't know it would be this spicy. She had bare arms. She's so lusty. What the devil is the matter? He asked, eyeing me in a manner that I could ill endure after his inhospitable treatment. What the devil indeed? I muttered. The herd of possessed swine could have no worse spirits in them than those animals of yours, sir. You might as well have a stranger with a brood of tigers. They won't meddle with persons who touch nothing, he remarked, putting the bottle before me, and restoring the displaced table. The dogs do right to be vigilant. Take a glass of wine? No, thank you. Not bitten, are you? If I had been, I would have set my signet on the bitter. Heathcliff's countenance relaxed into a grin. Come, come, said he. You are flurried, Mr. Lockwood. Here, take a little wine. Guests are so exceedingly rare in this house that I and my dogs am willing to own hardly know how to receive them. Your health, sir. I bowed and returned to the pledge, beginning to perceive that it would be foolish to sit sulking for the misbehaviour of a pack of curs. Besides, I felt loath to yield the fellow further amusement at my expense, since his humour took that turn. He probably swayed by prudential consideration of the folly of offering a good tenant, relaxed a little in the laconic style of chipping off his pronouns and auxiliary verbs, and introduced what he supposed would be a subject of interest to me. A discourse on the advantages and disadvantages of my present place of retirement. I found him very intelligent on the topics we touched, and before I went home I was encouraged so far as to volunteer another visit tomorrow. He evidently wished no repetition of my intrusion. I shall go, notwithstanding. It is astonishing how sociable I feel myself compared with him. Bro, I didn't think I'd find anyone more antisocial than myself. Bare arms? What's next? Bare ankles? How lewd. We're gonna have to get age restricted on the CV. Ah! It's terrible. Terrible. Instead of what the hell did ye olden people say? What the devil? Yes, yes, they did. What the devil? They didn't bother with hell. They went for the main man himself. What the devil? Chapter 2. Finish my tea. It's getting cold. Da. 1 second. Wah. Okay. Let's go, chapter 2. What in blue blazes is this? Indubitably. I'm beginning to remember why antisocial emo teen high school me loved this book so much. You saw yourself in it, and that's okay. Yesterday afternoon set in misty and cold. I had half a mind to spend it by my study fire instead of wading through the heath and mud to Wuthering Heights. On coming up from dinner, however, if old tea means cold tea, then you, Bryony, are the ice queen. But the tea's not that old. It's only like 40 minutes old since I made it before the stream. No wonder my teas keep getting cold when I'm streaming. It makes a lot of sense. However, NB, I dined between 12 and 1 o'clock. The housekeeper, a matronly lady, taken as fixture along with the house, could not, or would not, comprehend my request that I might be served at 5. On mounting the stairs with a lazy intention and stepping into the room, I saw a servant girl on her knees, surrounded by brushes and coal scuttles, and raising an infernal dust as she extinguished the flames of the heaps of cinders. This spectacle drove me back immediately. I took my hat and, after 4 miles' walk, arrived at Heathcliff's garden gate, just in time to escape the first feathery flakes of a snow shower. On that bleak hill top the earth was hard with a black frost, and the air made me shiver through every limb. Being unable to remove the chain, I jumped over, and running up the flagged causeway bordered with straggling gooseberry bushes, knocked vainly for admittance till my knuckles tingled and the dogs howled. Wretched inmates, I ejaculated mentally. I know, we shouldn't giggle at the way they use the word ejaculated, because, you know, that's just how they used it back then. But it's a funny word. He ejaculated. You deserve perpetual isolation from your species for your curlish inhospitality. At least I would love to keep my doors barred in the daytime. I don't care, I will get in. So resolved, I grabbed the latch and shook it vehemently. Ginger-faced Joseph projected his head from round a window barn. What are you good for? He shouted. To masters, down! Oh God, the accent, oh lordy. De meisters, down! It's fouled. Go round into the lathe if you want to speak to him. I may be 27, but you can't help but giggle. Always giggle. Mentally ejaculate. That old Jimmy Neutron playing brass. He's ejaculating more than Watson on your average Sherlock Holmes story. He is. He's used the word ejaculation a lot. Is there nobody inside to open the door? I hallooed. Hallooed? Now why isn't that a word we use anymore? I hallooed. Responsively. There's nowt but missus. She'll not open ye making flaysome dins in the net. Why cannot you tell her whom I am, eh, Joseph? No, me. I'll have an end with. What you say? Is he Scottish? Muttered the head, vanishing. The snow began to drive thickly. I seized the handle to essay another trial, when a young man with a coat and shouldering a pitchfork appeared in the yard behind. He hailed me to follow him, and after marching through a wash-house and a paved area containing a coal shed, pump, and pigeon cot, we at length arrived in the huge, warm, cheerful apartment where I was formally received. It glowed delightfully in the radiance of an immense fire, compounded of coal, peat, and wood. And near the table, laid for a plentiful evening meal, I was pleased to observe the Mrs., an individual whose existence I had never previously suspected. I bowed and waited, thinking she would bid me take a seat. She looked at me, leaning back in her chair, and remained motionless and mute. "Rough weather," I remarked. "I'm afraid, Mrs. Heathcliff, the door must bear the consequence of your servant's leisure attendance. I had hard work to make them hear me." She never opened her mouth. I stared. She stared, also. At any rate, she kept her eyes on me in a cool, regardless manner, exceedingly embarrassing and disagreeable. So what dialect is Joseph using? Sounds like an unholy mix of Irish, Scottish, and Cornish. Potentially. Bryony reading accents. Exactly how she normally sounds. Oi! Shat! She never opened... No, I said that. "Sit down," said the young man gruffly. "He'll be in soon." If it gets to the point where Bryony can't figure out the accent, we're truly lost. I'm terrible with accents. Have I ever told you that? I can't tell where people are from 9 times out of 10. I obeyed and hemmed, and called the villain Juno, who designed at this second interview to move the extreme tip of her tail in token of owning my acquaintance. "A beautiful animal," I commenced again. "Do you intend parting with the little ones, ma'am?" "They are not mine," said the amiable hostess, more repellently than Heathcliff himself could have replied. "Ah, your favourites are among these?" I continued, turning to an obscure cushion full of something like cats. "A strange choice of favourites," she observed scornfully. "Unluckily, it was a heap of dead rabbits." I hemmed once more, and drew closer to the hearth, repeating my comment on the wilderness of the evening. "You should not have come out," said she, rising and reaching from the chimney pipe of the painted canisters. Her position before was sheltered from the light. Now I had a distinct view of her whole figure and countenance. She was slender and apparently scarcely past girlhood, an amiable form, and the most exquisite little face I had ever had the pleasure of beholding. Small features, very fair, flaxen ringlets, or rather golden, hanging loose on her delicate neck, and eyes had they been very agreeable in expression, it would have been irresistible. Fortunately for my susceptible heart, the only sentiment they evidenced hovered between scorn and a kind of desperation singularly unnatural to be detected there. The canisters were almost out of her reach. I made a motion to aid her. She turned upon me as a minster might turn if anyone attempted to assist him in counting gold. "I don't want your help," she snapped. "I can get them for myself." I beg your pardon, I hastened to reply. Were you asked to tea? She demanded, trying an apron over her neat black frock, and standing with a spoonful of leaf poised over the pot. I shall be glad to have a cup, I answered. Were you asked? She repeated. No, I said, half smiling. You are the proper person to ask me. She flung the tea back, spoon and all, and resumed her chair in a pet. Her forehead corrugated, and her red underlip pushed out like a child's ready to cry. Meanwhile, the young man had slung onto his person a decidedly shabby undergarment, and erecting himself before the blaze, looked down on me from the corner of his eye, for all the world as if there were some mortal feud unavenged between us. So what I'm getting, this guy's moved into a new house. He's introduced himself to his landlord. His landlord's dogs nearly ate him. He got invited round again. He decided to go round again, and everyone's looking at him like he shouldn't be there. This is 100% the most awkward book in the world so far. Everyone hates this guy. She really just asked who asked, basically. Yeah, she was like, did you get asked for tea? That's like, I'd like tea. Did I ask you for tea? No. Oh, then you're not getting any tea. Ha ha. I would cry if someone did that to me. If someone said, hey, do you want tea? Or, I'm making tea, but I'm not making any for you, basically. That's Heathcliff for you. Awkward duck. I began to doubt whether he were a servant or not. His dress and speech were both rude, entirely devoid of the superiority observable in Mr. and Mrs. Heathcliff. His thick brown curls were rough and uncultivated, his whiskers encroached bearishly over his cheeks, and his hands were embrowned like those of a common labourer. Still, his bearing was free, almost haughty, and he showed none of a domestic assiduity in attending on the lady of the house. In the absence of clear proofs of his condition, I deemed it best to abstain from noticing his curious conduct, and 5 minutes afterwards the entrance of Heathcliff relieved me, in some measure, of my uncomfortable state. Depriving Bryony of tea is in violation of the Geneva Convention. It is. It's written in there very clearly. Okay, but when does Dante and the Sinners turn up? I have no idea. I want the ability to spontaneously burst into tears and start wailing like a baby, just to see how people would react sometimes. You need to practice. That's the kind of acting you have to practice. It's very possible. I can think of sad things and kind of cry on combined, but like it's not easy. You have to think of something really sad. And I don't like being that sad, therefore I don't do it. It's just called being a theatre kid. Be more theatre. You see, sir, I am come according to promise, I exclaimed, assuming the cheerful, and I fear I shall be weatherbound for half an hour, if you can afford me shelter during that space. Half an hour, he said, shaking the white flakes from his clothes. I wonder you should select the thick of a snowstorm to ramble about in. Do you know that you run the risk of being lost in the marshes? People familiar with these moors often miss their road on such evenings, and I can tell you there is no chance of change at present. Perhaps I can get a guide among your lads, and he might stay at the range till morning. Could you spare me one? No, I could not. Oh, indeed. Well, then I must trust my own spag bowl. Yummy. It is famously known that the Brits added water boilers to their tanks so they can have cups without leaving the vehicles. Correct. Is that correct? I don't know. But it sounds correct, and I hope it's correct. Because we run off tea. We're people who run off tea. Unless you're a weird outlier like one Elizabeth Bloodflame Hololive lady. She's an outlier and should not be counted. She doesn't like tea. She's strange. Are you going to make tea then? Demanded he of the shabby coat, shifting his ferocious gaze from me to the young lady. Is he to have any? She asked, appealing to Heathcliff. Get it ready, will you? Was the answer, uttered so savagely that I started. The tone in which the words were said revealed a genuine bad nature. I no longer felt inclined to call Heathcliff a capital fellow. When the preparations were finished, he invited me with, "Now, sir, bring forward your chair," and we all, including the rustic youth, drew round the table, an austere silence prevailing while we discussed our meal. Oh my god, this is so awkward. She traded her love for tea for an amazing singing voice. Honestly, with her voice, that's a fair trade. It used to be an issue where crews would be caught outside their tanks boiling water, so it was now a standard for British MBTs. Of course, it had other uses per the mod, but we know the truth. Yes, we know it was for tea. Always has to be for tea. I thought, if I had caused the cloud, it was my duty to make an effort to dispel it. They could not, every day, sit so grim and tactum, and it was impossible, however ill-tempered they might be, that the universal scowl they wore was their everyday countenance. I have a feeling it is their everyday countenance, sweet friend. I think he's got his work cut out for him. It is strange, I began, in the interval of swallowing one cup of tea and receiving another. It is strange how custom can mould our tastes and ideas. Many could not imagine the existence of happiness in a life of such complete exile from the world as you spend, Mr. Heathcliff. Yet I'll venture to say that surrounded by your family, and with your amiable lady as the presiding genius of your home and heart, "My amiable lady?" he interrupted, with an almost diabolical sneer on his face. "Where is she, my amiable lady?" "Mrs. Heathcliff. Your wife, I mean." "Oh, yes. Oh, you would imitate that her spirit has taken the post of mystering angel and guards the fortunes of Wuthering Heights, even when her body is gone. Is that it? I don't think that's his wife." Perceiving myself a blunder, I attempted to correct it. I might have seen there was too great a disparity between the ages of the parties to make it likely that they were man and wife. One was about 40, a period of menial vigour, at which men seldom cherish the delusion of being married for love by girls. That dream is reserved for the solace of our declining years. The other did not look 17. When it flashed upon me, the clown at my elbow, who is drinking his tea out of a basin and eating his bread with unwashed hands, may be her husband. Heathcliff Jr., of course. He is the consequence of being buried alive. She has thrown herself away upon that boar from sheer ignorance that better individuals existed. A sad pity. I must beware how I caused her to regret her choice. The last reflection may seem conceited. It was not. My neighbour struck me as bordering on repulsive. I knew, though, through experience, that I was tolerably attractive. Yes, that was a big blunder. Oh, I thought your daughter was your wife. Oops. This is a relatively cheery day in Wuthering Heights. Oh my god. What are we in for? Miss Heathcliff is my daughter-in-law, said Heathcliff, corroborating my surmise. He turned as he spoke, a peculiar look in her direction, a look of hatred, unless he has a most perverse set of facial muscles that will not, like those other people, interpret the language of his soul. Ah, certainly, I see it now. You are the favoured possessor of the benefice fairy, I remarked, turning to my neighbour. This was worse than before. The youth grew crimson and clenched his fists with every appearance of a meditated assault. But he seemed to recollect himself presently, and smothered the storm with a brutal curse muttered on my behalf, which, however, I took care not to notice. Unhappy in your conjectures, sir, observed my host. We neither of us have the privilege of owning your good fairy. Her mate is dead. I said she was my daughter-in-law, therefore she must have married my son. And this young man is not my son, assuredly. Hello, Hamra, remember you? Maybe? Heathcliff smiled again, as if it were rather too bold to jest to attribute the paternity of that bear to him. My name is Harton Ershaw, growled the other, and I'd counsel you to respect it. I've known no disrespect, which was my reply, laughing internally at the dignity with which he announced himself. He fixed his eye on me for longer than I cared to return the stare for fear I might be tempted, either to box his ears or render his hilarity audible. I began to feel unmistakably out of place in that pleasant family circle. The dismissal spiritual atmosphere overcame and more than neutralized the glowing physical comforts around me, and I resolved to be cautious how I ventured under those rafters a third time. How about he just never goes there again? This is clearly not a very comfortable place to be. If you would like to be in the most awkward of social situations, Wuthering Heights is the place. The business of eating being concluded, and no one uttering a word of social conversation, I approached a window to examine the weather. A sorrowful sight I saw, dark night coming down prematurely, and sky and hills mingled in one bitter whirl of wind and suffocating snow. I don't think it's possible for me to get home now without a guide, I could not help exclaiming. The roads will be buried already, and if they were bare, I could scarcely distinguish a foot in advance. I might have told this story before, but I refused to go back to a restaurant after a meal there. Oh no, was it as bad as this? I would rather be honest than lie to you. You may have been a wee bit forgotten, and I do apologise for that, Hamram. But welcome back. Nice to see you again. Not that bad, thankfully. Hurry, Tin, drive those dozen sheep into the barn porch. They'll be covered if left in the fold all night. Put a plank before them, said Heathcliff. How must I do? I continued with rising irritation. There was no reply to my question, and on looking round I saw only Joseph bringing in a pail of porridge for the dogs, and Mrs. Heathcliff leaning over the fire, diverting her attention with burning a bundle of matches. with a bundle of matches which had fallen from the chimney piece as she restored the tea canister to its place. The former, when he had disposed his burden, took a critical survey of the room, and in cracked tones grated, "Oh, wonder how ye can fashion to stand there i' idleness and when all em's gone out, but you're nowt, and it's no use talking, you'll never mend your ill ways, but go right to the devil, like your mother before ye." I imagined for a moment that this piece of eloquence was addressed to me, and sufficiently enraged, stepped towards the aged rascal, with an intention of kicking him out of the door. Mrs. Heathcliff, however, checked me by her answer. "You scandalous old hypocrite," she replied. "Are you not afraid of being carried away bodily whenever you mention the devil's name? I warn you to refrain from provoking me, or I'll ask your abduction as a special favour. Stop! Look here, Joseph!" She continued, taking a long, dark book from the shelf. "I'll show you how far I progressed in the black art. I shall soon be competent to make a clear house of it. The Red Crow didn't die by chance, and your wretch can hardly be reckoned among provincial visitations." Actually, I haven't seen your stream since 2 years ago. Oh my gosh, so you're an old school visitor. Thank you again for so much coming back. I have a different username, trying to remember it. Were you like one of the first? Did you watch my Final Fantasy ones back in the day? Oh gosh, what was it? Were you the one that stream sniped me with the cute Inu, doggo mount? Essentially, my fiance finished the meal like 10 minutes before me because of the short meal times at their college. While I took it slow, I had a more flexible schedule than mine. You have a spider? Wonderful. The little witch put a mock malignantly into her beautiful eyes, and Joseph, trembling with sincere horror, hurried out, praying and ejaculating, "Wicked!" That's a movie coming out soon. As he went. I thought her conduct must be prompted by a species of dreary fun, and now that we were alone, I endeavoured to interest her in my distress. "Mrs. Heathcliff," I said earnestly, "you must excuse me for troubling you. I presume because, with that face, I'm sure you cannot help being good-hearted. Do point out some landmarks by which I may know my way home. I have no more idea how to get there than you would have how to get to London." "Take the road we came," she answered, ensconcing herself in a chair with a candle and a long book open before her. "It's a brief advice, but as sound as I can give." Syrup! Yes, I remember you! I remember that username! Yes! Welcome back, welcome back. I do remember that. You were not the person who stream sniped me in Final Fantasy, but I do remember that username. Welcome back. Welcome back from so long ago. Yes, I remember that. Then, if you hear of me being discovered dead in a bog or a pit full of snow, your conscience won't whisper how it is partly your fault. How so? I cannot escort you. They wouldn't let me go to the end of the garden wall. You? I should be sorry to ask you to cross the threshold for my convenience on such a night, I cried. I want you to tell me the way home, not show it, or else persuade Mr. Heathcliff to give me a guide. Who? There is himself, Earnshaw, Zillah, Joseph, and I. Which would you have? Are there no boys at the farm? No, those are all. Then it follows that I am compelled to stay. that you may settle with your host. I have nothing to do with it. I hope it will be a lesson to you to make no more rash journeys on these hills, cried Heathcliff's stern voice from the kitchen. As to staying here, I don't keep accommodations for visitors. You must share a bed with Hareton or Joseph if you do. I can sleep on a chair in this room, I replied. No, no, a stranger is a stranger, be he rich or poor. It will not suit me to permit anyone the range of the place while I am of God, he said in the unmannerly wretch. With this insult, my patience was at an end. I uttered an expression of disgust and pushed past him to the yard, running against Earnshaw in my haste. It was so dark I could not see the means of exit, and as I wandered around I heard another specimen of their civil behaviour amongst each other. At first the young man appeared about to brief me. I'll go with him as far as the park, he said. You'll go with him to hell! Exclaimed his master, or whoever's relation he bore. And who is to look after the horses, eh? A man's life has more consequences than one evening's neglect of the horses. Someone must go, murmured Mrs. Heathcliff, more kindly than I expected. Not at your command, retorted Hareton. If you set store on him, you'd better be quiet. Then I hope his ghost will haunt you, and I hope Mr. Heathcliff will never get another tenant till the Grange is in ruin, she answered sharply. Hearken! Hearken! Shoo! Curse it on 'em! Muttered Joseph, towards whom I had been steering. He sat within earshot milking the cows by the light of a lantern, which I seized unceremoniously, and calling out I would send it back on the morrow, rushed to the nearest postern. Meister! He's stealing the lantern! Shouted the ancient, pursuing my tread. Hey, Nasher! Hey, dog! Hey, wolf! Holler him! Hold him! Oh, it just seems to sleep, but I flinch every time you sleep. Apologies. I'll try to be quiet. Go to sleep, ham ram. Go to sleep, stream chatter. When you wake, I'll probably still scream and probably make you wake up again. But I'll try not to. On opening the little door, two hairy monsters flew at my throat, bearing me down and extinguishing the light, while a mingled gruff from Heathcliff and Hareton put the copestone of my rage and put the copestone on my rage and humiliation. Fortunately, the beasts seemed more bent on stretching their paws and yawning, and flourishing their tails, than devouring me alive. But they would suffer no resurrection, and I was forced to lie till their malignant masters pleased to deliver me. Then, hasteless and trembling with wrath, I ordered the miscreants to let me out, on their peril to keep me 1 minute longer, with several incoherent threats of retaliation that, in their indefinite depth of vilency, smacked of King Lear. The vehemence of my agitation brought on a copious bleeding at the nose, and still Heathcliff laughed, and still I scolded. I don't know what would have concluded the scene, had there not been one person at hand rather more rational than myself, and more benevolent than my entertainer. It was Zillah, the stout housewife, who at length issued forth to inquire into the nature of the uproar. She thought that some of them had been laying violent hands on me, and not daring to attack her master, she turned her vocal artillery against the younger scoundrel. Well, Mr. Earnshaw, she cried, I wonder what you'll have to agate next. Are we going to murder folk on our very doorstones? I see this house will never do for me. Look at poor lad, he's fair choking. Whilst wished your mutton go on. Come in, and I'll cure that. There, now, hold you still. I flinched again. All I said was, well! With these words, she suddenly splashed a pint of icy water down on my neck and pulled me down to the kitchen. Mr. Heathcliff followed, his accidental merriment expiring quickly in his habitual moroseness. I was sick exceedingly and dizzy and faint, and thus compelled perforce to accept lodgings under his roof. He told Zilla to give me a glass of brandy, and then passed on to the inner room, while she consoled with me on my sorry predicament, and having obeyed his orders, whereby I was somewhat revived, ushered me to bed. Bro never got to leave the house of social horrors. Chapter 3. Whilst leading the way upstairs, she recommended that I should hide the candle and not make a noise, for her master had an odd notion about the chamber she would put me in, and never let anybody lodge there willingly. I asked the reason. She said she did not know. She answered she had only lived there a year or two, and they had so many queer goings-on. She could not begin to be curious. Too stupefied to be curious myself, I fastened my door and glanced round for the bed. Hello! Capita Clap! Welcome! Yes, this is my first time reading Wuthering Heights. I have never read it before. There has been some suggestions for it, though. And so far, it's awful. Not in the way it's writing, but the situations have been awful. Too stupefied to be curious myself, I fastened my door and glanced round for the bed. The whole furniture consisted of a chair, a clothes press, and a large oak case with squares cut out near the top, resembling coach windows. Having approached this structure, I looked inside and perceived it to be a singular sort of old-fashioned couch, very conveniently designed to obviate the necessity for every member of the family having room for himself. In fact, it formed a little closet, and the ledge of a window, which it enclosed, served as a table. I slid back the panelled sides and got in with my light, pulled them together again. It felt secure against the vigilance of Heathcliff and everyone else. The ledge where I placed my candle had a few mildewed books piled up in one corner, and it was covered with writing scratched on the paint. This writing, however, was nothing but a name repeated in all kinds of characters, large and small. Catherine Earnshaw. The here and there varied to Catherine Heathcliff, and then again to Catherine Linton. In vapid listless, I leaned my head against the window and continued spelling over Catherine Earnshaw, Heathcliff, Linden, till my eyes closed. But they had not rested 5 minutes when the glare of white letters started from the dark, as vivid as spectres. The air swarmed with Catherines. The air swarmed with Catherines, and roused myself to dispel the obstructive name. I discovered my candle wick reclining on one of the antique volumes, and perfuming the place with an odour of roasted calf-skin. I snuffed it off, and, very ill at ease under the influence of cold and lingering nausea, I sat up and spread open the injured tome on my knee. It was a testament in lean type, and smelled dreadfully musty. A fly leaf bore the inscription, Catherine Earnshaw, her book. Oh Lord, are you sure you're okay and you're not just like shivering? Hiram, do you need more blankets? You may need more blankets. Yeah, it is currently my favourite female author. I read it I read it while also reading Pride and Prejudice. It was a weird experience. We've just finished reading Pride and Prejudice, actually, so we're going straight into this after it, and it's quite good because I feel like I'm already in that sort of mindset after reading Pride and Prejudice to understand why the social aspects are as weird as they are in this and why these people are so weird, especially after like the expectations that were put on the social aspects in Pride and Prejudice. It makes this even more weird, which is great. And a date some quarter of a century back. I shut it and took up another and another till I had examined all. Catherine's library was select, and its state of dilapidation proved it to have been well used, though not altogether for a legitimate purpose. Scarcely one chapter had escaped a pen and ink commentary, at least the appearance of one, covering every morsel of blank that the printer had left. Some were detached sentences, other parts took from a regular diary, scrawled in an unformed childish hand. At the top of an extra page, quite a treasure, probably, when first lighted on, I was greatly amused to behold an excellent caricature of my friend Joseph, rudely yet powerfully sketched. An intimate interest kindled within me for the unknown Catherine, and I began forthwith to decipher her faded hieroglyphics. An awful Sunday, commenced the paragraph beneath. I wish my father were back again. Hindley is a detestable substitute. His conduct to Heathcliff is atrocious. H and I are going to rebel. We took our initiatory step this evening. Oh, it's because of your cat. That makes sense. All day had been flooding with rain. We could not go to church, so Joseph must needs get up a congregation in the garret, and while Hindley and his wife basked downstairs before a comfortable fire, doing anything but reading their Bibles, I'll answer for it, Heathcliff, myself, and the unhappy ploughboy were commanded to take our prayer books and mount. We were ranged in a row on a sack of corn, groaning and shivering, and hoping that Joseph would shiver too, so that he might give us a short homily for his own sake. A vain idea. The service lasted precisely 3 hours, and yet my brother had the face to exclaim, when he saw us descending, "What, done already? On Sunday evenings we used to be permitted to play, if we did not make much noise. Now a mere titter is sufficient to send us into corners." It's not that weird. Maybe you could say these are archetypes of things humans always repeat. Heathcliff is like a beastly man. I'm not screaming, though. I'm just putting emphasis on words more than anything. Apparently they did go to a cold spot to read. You forget to have a master here. Yeah, I kind of can't not yell, because otherwise I'm ignoring the punctuation kind of thing. I gotta put feeling into the writing, you know? Or as best I can. I am no actress. "You forget you have a master here," says the tyrant. "I'll demolish the first who puts me out of the temper. I insist on perfect sobriety and silence. Oh boy, was that you? Francis, darling, pull his hair as you go by. I heard him snap his fingers." Francis pulled his hair heartedly, and then went and seated herself on her husband's knee. And there they were, like two babies, kissing and talking nonsense by the hour. Foolish palaver that we should be ashamed of. We made ourselves as snug as our means allowed in the arch of the dresser. I had just fastened our pinafores together and hung them up a curtain when in comes Joseph on an errand from the stables. He tears down my handiwork, boxes my ears, and croaks, "To master not but just buried, and Sabbath not heard, to unt sound and gospel, still in your lungs and ye de barlarkin. Shame on ye! Sit ye down, I'll child ye." No stifling passion. More passion, more energy. You shouldn't watch your streams while you're sleeping if you did for 2 years. Maybe you should pick up a VOD. Maybe you should go for a VOD or something that's a bit quieter. Maybe you should turn the volume down on me. One or the other. It's a good listen when awake. Or adjust the volume. I'd say adjust the volume. Make me quiet. Then I have no choice but to be quiet, whether I like it or not. There's a good books enough that'll read 'em. Sit ye down and think of your souls. Saying this, he compelled us to square our positions, that we might receive from far off fire a dull ray to show us the next text of the lumber he thrust upon us. I could not bear the employment. I took my dingy volume by the scroop and hurled it into the dog kennel, vowing I hated the good book. Heathcliff kicked his into the same place. Then there was a hubbub. "Maister Inley!" shouted our chaplain. "Maister, come hither!" Miss Cathy's riven the backs off the helmet of salvation, and Heathcliff's paused his fit into first part to Broadway to destruction. It's fair flaysome that ye let 'em go on this gate, ere the old man what had laced 'em properly. But he is gone. I think what he's trying to say is people put some effort into making those books. Why would you throw them? I think that's what's happening. Hindley hurried from his paradise on the hearths and, seizing one of us by the collar and the other by the arm, hurled both into the back kitchen, where Joseph evaded. Old Nick would fetch us as sure as we were living, and so comforted we each sought a separate nook to await his advent. I reached this book and a pot of ink from a shelf, and pushed the house door ajar to give me light, and I have got the time on with writing for 20 minutes, but my companion is impatient, and proposes that we should appropriate the dairywoman's cloak, and have a scamper on the moors under its shelter. A pleasant suggestion. And then, if the surly old man comes back in, he may believe his prophecy verified. He cannot be damper or colder in the rain than we are. Spanish speaker here. In Spanish, when characters talk, we use the dashy symbols. Do you guys, Yes, we use quotation marks rather than dashy symbols. Dashy symbols are usually they're almost like brackets for us, like a subtitles thing. A pleasant suggestion. And then, we don't tend to use the dashy lines a lot. Hi, Maiden! Stream's going great. I have hands again. Everything's going great. This book is weird. The social is so awkward. You have never seen social situations as awkward as this book so far. No problem. Happy to answer questions on literature. Best I can. I also love that I can do finger guns a lot. Finger guns. Hands. I suppose Catherine fulfilled her project, for the next sentence took up another subject. She waxed lachrymose. How little did I dream that Hindley would ever make me cry so, she wrote. My head aches till I cannot keep it on the pillow, and still I can't give over poor Heathcliff. Hindley calls him a vagabond, and won't let him sit with us, nor eat with us any more, and says he and I must not play together, and threatens to turn him out of the house if we break his orders. He has been blaming our father. How dare he for treating H too liberally, and swears he will reduce him to his right place. Oh no. What are hands if not for throwing? Throw hands, throw hands. I can't really do a very good actiony fight pose. Ah! Punch, punch, punch. Beat you up. I began to nod drowsily over the dim page, my eye wandering from manuscript to print. I saw a red ornamented title, 70 times 7, the first of the 71st, a pious discourse delivered by Reverend Jabaz Branderham in the chapel of Gimmerden So. And while I was half-consciously worrying my brain to guess what Jabez Branderham would make of his subject, I sank back in bed and fell asleep. Alas for the effects of bad tea and bad temper. What else could it be that made me pass such a terrible night? I don't remember another that I can at all compare with it since I was capable of suffering. I began to dream almost before I ceased to be sensible of my locality. I thought it was morning, and I had set out on my way home with Joseph for a guide. The snow lay yards deep in our road, and as we floundered on, my companion wearied me with constant reproaches that I had not brought a pilgrim's staff, telling me that I could never get into the house without one, and boastfully flourishing a heavy-headed cudgel, which I understood to be so denominated. For a moment I considered it absurd that I should need such a weapon to gain admittance into my own residence. Then a new idea flashed across me. I was not going there. We were journeying to hear the famous Jabez Branderham preach from the next 70 times 7, and either Joseph, the preacher, or I had committed the first of the 71st, and were to be publicly exposed and excommunicated. Sounds about right for a dream when you kind of fall asleep listening to something or like just reading something. It all just kind of invades your dream in the weirdest ways. We came to the chapel. I had passed it, really, in my walks, twice or thrice. It lies in a hollow between two hills, an elevated hollow near a swamp. Those peaty moisture is said to answer all the purpose of embalming on the few corpses disposed there. The roof had been kept whole hitherto, but as the clergyman's stipend is only £20 per annum, and a house with 2 rooms threateningly speedily to determine into one, no clergyman will undertake the duties of pastor, especially as it is currently reported that his flock would rather let him starve than increase the living by 1 penny from their own pockets. However, in my dream, Jabez had a full and attentive congregation, and he preached, good God, what a sermon, divided into 490 parts, each fully equal to an ordinary address from the pulpit, and each discussing a separate sin. Where he searched for them, I cannot tell. He had his private manner of interpreting the phrase, and it seemed necessary the brother should sin different sins on every occasion. They were of the most curious character, odd transgressions I never imagined previously. Oh, how weary I grew! How withered and yawned and nodded and revived! How I pinched and prickled myself and rubbed my eyes and stood up and sat down again and nudged Joseph to inform me if he would ever have done, and I was condemned to hear all out. Finally, he reached the first of the 71st. A crisis and sudden inspiration descended upon me. I was moved to rise and denounce Jabez Banderham as the sinner of the sin no Christian need pardon. "Sir," I exclaimed, "sitting here within these 4 walls at one stretch, I have endured and forgiven the 490 heads of your discourse. 70 times, 7 times, I have plucked up my hat and had been about to depart. 70 times, 7 times have you preposterously forced me to resume my seat. The 491st is too much. Fellow martyrs, have at him, drag him down and crush him to atoms, that the place which knows him may know him more." Atoms? Atoms in an 1800s book? When did we know about atoms? When was that a thing? When was the atom discovered? One hot minute. When was the atom discovered? Da 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 da. It's a little bit early for the discovery of atoms. Admittedly, this was probably written in the future. But apparently the first sort of idea of atoms was being thrown around in the 1800s. Greek philosophers talked about atoms. The concept was first... Really? We've known about atoms that long? Obviously, we never, proved it, but I didn't realize that the word atoms and the idea of atoms was being thrown around that long. Today I learned. Technically ancient Greece. Damn, them Greeks, bro. Greeks and the Romans did a lot of stuff. "Thou art the man," cried Jabez, after a solemn pause, leaning over his cushion. 70 times 7 didst thou, gapling, consort thy visage. 70 times 7 did I take counsel with my soul. Lo, this human is weakness. This also may be absolved. The first of the 71st is come. Brethren, execute upon him the judgment written. Such honour have all his saints. With that concluding word, the whole assembly, exhaling their pilgrims' staves, rushed around me in a body, and I, having no weapon to raise in self-defence, commenced grappling with Joseph, my nearest and most ferocious assailant, for his. In the confluence of the multitude, several clubs crossed blows aimed at me, fell on other sconces. Presently the whole chapel resounded with raspings and counter-rappings. Every man's hand was against his neighbour, and Branderham, unwilling to remain idle, poured forth his zeal in the shower of loud taps on the boards of the pulpit, which responded so smartly that, at last, to my unspeakable relief, they woke me. And what was it that had suggested the tremendous tumult? What had played Jabez's part in the row? Merely the branch of a fir tree that touched my lattice as the blast wailed by, and rattled its dry cones against the panes. I listened doubtingly in an instant, detected the disturber, then turned and dozed and dreamed again, if possible, still more disagreeably than before. This time I remembered I was lying in the oak closet, and I heard distinctly the gusty wind and the driving of snow. I heard also the fur burr repeating its teasing sound, and ascribed it to the right cause. But it annoyed me so much, and I resolved to silence it, if possible, and I rose and endeavoured to unhasp the casement. The hook was soldered into the staple, and circumstance observed me, then awake, but forgotten. I must stop it nevertheless, I muttered, knocking my knuckles to the glass. Have you ever read Mr. Fix-It and Miss Sue on this channel? I would love to hear it. I have not. Is it an oldie book that I can read without worries of copyright? The more modern understanding seems to come about in the first decade of the 1800s in chemistry publications. The book being published in 1847 would give time for the knowledge to spread a bit. But also the Greeks calling it, that's really cool. It is! Like, I guess it's one of those. Also, thank you for the raid, Tyler. Hello! I guess it's one of those that Greeks figured a name for something very small that was called atoms, and then scientists discovered the atom and used that name. Probably. But it's more fun to think the Greeks called it. Nevertheless, I must stop it, I muttered, knocking my knuckles through the glass and stretching an arm out and seizing the importunate branch, instead of which my fingers closed on the fingers of a little ice-cold hand. The intense horror of nightmare came over me. I tried to draw back my arm, but the hand clung to it, and a most melancholy voice sobbed, "Let me in! Let me in!" "Who are you?" I asked, struggling meanwhile to disengage myself. "Catherine Linton," it replied shiveringly. Why did I think of Linton? I had read Earnshaw 20 times for Linton. "I'm come home. I lost my way on the moor." It was published this year, but is written in the fashion of the 1800s. I would have to talk to the author then, potentially, because copyright issues of reading stuff on stream. But I can have a look into it, and I can send a message over. But we have just started this. I will write it down, though, otherwise I'll forget. I'll write down the suggestion. Let me have a look. So, Mr. Fix-It and Miss Sue. There we go. Write it down. Yeah. Hello, Kira. Welcome. It's Kathy time. Kathy the Spooky Nightmare. Yeah, it was a concept of things made of small things. That's it. But then it was made a real thing, or at least a real theory we have. But then we've seen atoms, haven't we? And then we split in atoms. So it is real, not theory. I know some science is still technically theory, but it's all accepted theory. And nearly proven theory, but not quite proven theory. As it spoke, I discerned obscurely a child's face looking through the window. Terror made me cruel, and finding it useless to attempt to shake the creature off, I pulled its wrists on to the broken pane and rubbed it to and fro till the blood ran down and soaked the bedclothes. It still wailed, "Let me in!" It maintained its tenacious grip, almost maddening me with fear. "How can I said at length, "Let me go, if you want me to let you in." The fingers relaxed. I snatched mine through the hole, hurriedly piled the books up in a pyramid against it, and stopped my ears to exclude the lamentable prayer. I seemed to keep them closed above a quarter of an hour, yet the instant I listened again, there was the doleful cry moaning on. "Begone!" I shouted. "I'll never let you in, not if you beg for 20 years. "It is 20 years, mourned the voice. 20 years. I've waited for I've been waif for 20 years. Thereat began a feeble scratching outside, and the pile of books moved as if thrust forward. I tried to jump up, but could not stir a limb, and so yelled out in a frenzy of fright. To my confusion, I discovered the yell was not ideal. Hasty footsteps approached my chamber. Somebody pushed it open with a vigorous hand, and a light glimmered through the squares at the top of the bed. I sat shuddering, yet wiping the perspiration from my forehead. The intruder appeared to hesitate and mutter to himself. At least, he said in half-whisper, plainly not expecting an answer. "Is anyone here?" I considered it best to confess my presence, for I knew Heathcliff's accents, and feared he might search further if I kept quiet. Yes! Also, yes, if you do want to suggest books and things, and you can get them on the Discord. That way you can also give me links to the books as well, and things like that. It's very useful to put it on the Discord. So join the Discord and recommend things. You might even recommend something like this, which has made it onto the stream. Yeah. With this intention, I turned and opened the panels, and shall not soon forget the effect my action produced. Heathcliff stood near the entrance, his shirt and trousers with a candle dripping over his fingers, and his face as white as the wall behind him. The first creak of the oak startled him, like an electric shock. The light leaped from his hold to a distance of some feet, and his agitation was so extreme that he could hardly pick it up. "It is only your guest, sir," I called out, desirous to spare him the humiliation of exposing his cowardice further. I had the misfortune to scream in my sleep, owing to a frightful nightmare. "I'm sorry I disturbed you." "Oh, God confound you, Mr. Lockwood! I wish you were at the—" commenced my host, settling the candle on the chair because he found it impossible to hold it steady. "And who showed you up to this room?" He continued, crushing his nails into his palms and grinding his teeth as to subdue the maxillary convulsions. "Who was it? I've made good mind to turn them out of the house this moment." "It was your servant Zillah," I replied, flinging myself on the floor and rapidly resuming my garments. "I should not care if you did, Mr. Heathcliff. She richly deserves it. I suppose she wanted to get another proof that the place was haunted at my expense. Well, it is, swarming with ghosts and goblins. You have reasoning to shut it up, I assure you. No one will thank you for a doze in such a den." "What do you mean?" asked Heathcliff. "And what are you doing? Lie down and finish out the night, since you are here, but for heaven's sake don't repeat that horrid noise. Nothing could excuse it unless you were having your throat cut out." "If the little fiend had gotten in the window, she probably would have strangled me," I returned. "I'm not going to endure the persecutions of your inhospitable ancestors again. Was not the Reverend Jabez Brandacombe akin to your mother's side? And that minx, Catherine Linton, or Ayrshire, or however she was called, she must have been a changeling, wicked little soul. She told me she had been walking the earth these 20 years, a just punishment for her mortal transgressions, I have no doubt." Scarcely were these words uttered when I recollected the association of Heathcliff's and Catherine's name in the book, which had completely slipped from my memory, till thus awakened. I blushed at my inconsideration, but, without showing further consciousness of the offence, I hastened to add, "The truth is, sir, I passed the first part of the night in—" Here I stopped afresh. I was about to say, perusing these old volumes. Then it would have revealed my knowledge of their written, as well as their printed contents, so correcting myself, I went on, "in spelling over the names scratched on the window ledge. A monotonous occupation calculated to set me asleep like counting, or—" "What can you mean by talking this way to me? thundered Heathcliff with savage vehemence. "How dare you under my roof? God, he's mad to speak!" And he struck his forehead with rage. I did not know whether to resent his language or peruse my explanation, but he seemed so powerfully affected that I took pity and proceeded with my dreams, affirming I had never heard the application of Catherine Linton before, but reading it often over produced an impression which personified itself when no longer my imagination under control. Heathcliff gradually fell into the shelter of the bed, as I spoke, finally sitting down almost concealed behind it. I guess, however, by his irregular and intercepted breathing, that he struggled to vanquish an excess of violent emotions. Not liking to show him I had heard the conflict, I continued my toilette rather nosily, looked at my watch, and soliloquized on the length of the night. Not 3 o'clock yet. I could have taken an oath that it had been 6. Time stagnates here. We must surely have retired to rest at 8. Always 9 in winter, and rise at 4, said my host, suppressing a groan, and, as I fancied by the motion of his arm's shadow, dashing a tear from his eyes, "Mr. Lockwood," he added, "you may go into my room. You'll only be in the way coming downstairs so early, and your childish outcry has sent sleep to the devil for me." "And for me too," I replied. "I'll walk in the yard till daylight, and then I'll be off, and you need not dread a repetition of my intrusion. I now quite cured of seeking pleasure in society, be it country or town. A sensible man ought to find sufficient company in himself." "Delightful company," muttered Heathcliff. "Take the candle and go where you please. I shall join you directly. Keep out of the yard, though, the dogs are unchained, and the house Juno mounts sentinel there. And, nay, you can only ramble about the steps and passages. But away with you! I'll come in 2 minutes." I obeyed so far as to quit the chamber, when, ignorant where the narrow lobbies led, I stood still, and was witness involuntary to a piece of superstition on the part of my landlord, which belied oddly his apparent sense. He got onto the bed and wrenched open the lattice, bursting as he pulled at it into an uncontrollable passion of tears. Come in, he sobbed. "Cathy, do come. Oh, do, once more. Oh, my heart's darling, hear me this time. Catherine, at last." The spectre showed as spectre's ordinary caprice. It gave no sign of being, but the snow and wind whirled wildly, even reaching my station and blowing out the light. There was such an anguish in the gust of grief that accompanied his ravings that my compassion made me overlook its folly, and I drew half angry to have listened at all, and vexed at having related my ridiculous nightmare, since it produced that agony, though why was beyond my comprehension. I descended cautiously to the lower regions, and landed in the back kitchen, where a gleam of fire raked compactly together enabled me to rekindle my candle. Nothing was stirring except the brindled grey cat, which crept from the ashes and saluted me with a querulous meow. 2 benches, shaped in sections of a circle, nearly enclosed the hearth. On one of these I stretched myself, and Grimalkin mounted the other. We were both of us nodding ere at one invaded our retreat, and then it was Joseph shuffling down a wooden ladder that vanished in the roof through a trap. He ascended to his garret, I suppose. He cast a sinister look at the little flame which I had enticed to play between the ribs. swept the cat from its elevation, and bestowing himself the vacancy, commenced the operation of snuffing a 3-inched pipe with tobacco. My presence in his sanctum was evidently esteemed a piece of impudence too shameful for remark. He silently applied the tube to his lips, folded his arms, and puffed away. I let him enjoy the luxury unannoyed, and after sucking out his last wreath, I heaved a profound sigh. He got up and departed as solemnly as he came. A more elastic footstep entered next, and now I opened my mouth for a good morning, but closed it again, the salutations unachieved, for Hareton Earnshaw was performing his own orisons sotto voce in a series of curses directed against every object he touched, while he rummaged a corner for a spade or a shovel to dig through the drifts. He glanced over at the back of the bench, dilating his nostrils, and though as little of exchanging civilities with me as my companion the cat, I guessed by his preparations that eagerness was allowed, and, leaving my hard couch, made a movement to follow him. He noticed this, and thrust at an inner door with an end of his spade, imitating by an inarticulate sound that there was a place where I must go if I changed my locality. It opened into the house where the females were already astir, Zillah urging Flakes flame up the chimney with a colossal bellows, and Mrs. Heathcliff kneeling on the hearth, reading a book by the aid of the blaze. She held her hand interposed between the furnace heat and her eyes, and seemed absorbed in her occupation, desiring from it only to chide the servant for covering her with sparks, or push away a dog now and then that snoozled its nose overly forward onto her face. I was surprised to see Heathcliff there too. He stood by the fire, his back towards me, just finishing a stormy scene with poor Zillah, who ever and anon interrupted her labour to pluck up the corner of her apron and heave an indignant groan. "And you worthless!" he broke out as I entered, turning to his daughter-in-law and employing an epitaph as harmless as duck or sheep, but generally represented by a dash. "There you are, at your idle tricks again. The rest of them earn their bread. You live on my charity. Put your trash away, and find something to do. You shall pay me for the plague of having you eternally in my sight. Do you hear me, damnable jade?" "I'll put my trash away because you can make me if I refuse," answered the young lady, closing her book and throwing it on her chair. But I'll not do anything, though you should swear your tongue out, except what I please." Heathcliff lifted his hand, and the speaker sprang to a safe distance, obviously acquainted with its weight. Having no desire to be entertained by a cat-and-dog-looking combat, I stepped forward briskly as if eager to partake the warmth of the hearth, and innocent of any knowledge of the interrupted dispute. Each had enough decorum to suspend further hostilities, just about. Heathcliff placed his fists out of temptation into his pockets. Mrs. Heathcliff curled her lip and walked to a seat far off, where she kept her word by playing the part of a statue during the remainder of my stay. That was not long. I declined joining their breakfast, and at the first gleam of dawn took the opportunity of escaping into the free air, now clear and still, and cold as impalpable ice. My landlord hallooed for me to stop ere I reached the bottom of the garden, and offered to accompany me across the moor. It was well he did, for the whole hill back was one billowy white ocean, the swells and falls not indicating corresponding rises or depressions in the ground. Many pits, at least, were filled to a level, and entire ranges and mounds, the refuse of the quarries, blotted from the chart which my yesterday's walk left pictured in my mind. I had remarked on one side of the road, at intervals of 6 or 7 yards, a line of upright stones continued through the whole length of the barren. These were erected and daubed with lime on purpose to serve as guides in the dark, and also when a fall, like the present, confounded the deep swamps on either hand with the firmer path. But excepting a dirty dot pointing up here and there, all traces of their existence had vanished, and my companion found it necessary to warn me frequently to steer to the right or left when I imagined I was following correctly the windings of the road. We exchanged little conversation, and he halted at the entrance of Thrushcross Park, saying I could make no error there. Our adieux were limited to a hasty bow, and then I pushed forward, trusting my own resources. For the porter's lodge is untended as yet. The distance from the gate to the grange is 2 miles. I believe I managed to make it 4, what with losing myself among the trees and stinking up to the neck in snow. A predicament which only those who have experienced it can appreciate. At any rate, whatever were my wanderings, the clock chimed 12 as I entered the house, and that gave me exactly an hour for every mile of the usual way to Wuthering Heights. My human fixture and her satellites rushed to welcome me, exclaiming tumultuously they had completely given me up. Everybody conjectured that I perished that last night, and they were wondering how they must set about the search for my remains. I mean, if he goes out in a snowstorm and doesn't come back, that's all you could assume. I bid them be quiet now that they saw me returned, and benumbed to my very heart, I dragged upstairs, whence after putting on dry clothes, and pacing to and fro 30-40 minutes, to restore the animal heart, the animal heat, I adjourned to my study, feeble as a kitten, almost too much so to enjoy the cheerful fire and smoking coffee, which the servant had prepared for my refreshment. Da-da-da! Morning, Howdy! It's 5 a.m.? That's way too early. Go to bed. And you should definitely go to bed because it's been 2 hours. You know what time it is. Time to end. To end. Clap the stream. Clap. Can't quite clap. I can clap realsies, but we can't really clap theesies. But thank you all so much for coming. Thank you everyone in chat. Thank you to anyone who liked. Thank you to anyone who watches the VOD. No! We did 3 chapters. We did nearly 10%. This is not going to last half as long as Thingy-majig. Pride and Prejudice. Emily Brontosaurus bringing us the most awkward and terrifying dreams and most awkward social situations we have ever read. I can't wait for more meanness and for more... It's very interesting so far. I don't know what I was expecting going in. But this isn't... I didn't expect him to get attacked by a horde of dogs in the first, 2 seconds of the book. That was definitely weird. So, next week, obviously, we don't have any gaming streams because the game I made is out and everyone should buy it if you have not already been given a free copy. Go. Do it. Link in pinned comment in chat. Go. Do it now. So if you have not already, in free things you can do, You can, if you're on YouTube, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you're on Twitch, you can give the channel a cheeky follow. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you, everyone in chat. Thank you to anyone who lurked. Thank you to anyone who watches the VOD, because I appreciate you interacting and enjoying my content, no matter which way you decide to do it. Whatever works for you. If you would like to help this person, everyone play Brownie's game. You got to cause a child death in it. Yeah! If you would like to have a quick look at the game, Teller the VTuber did actually play the game for a little bit at the start of his stream. He started about an hour before this stream, so the VOD's up on his channel, so if you want to see just a preview of the game, you can watch that. If you want a more in-depth look at the game, you can watch any of the game development streams where I made this game live. And you know where all these stupid things came in, all the bad things came in. What else? If you would like to help this streamer get to a point where she can make minimum wage from her streams, so she can stream more, so I can bring content to you guys. Obviously, don't worry if you cannot afford these things, it's okay. But if anyone can afford these things and would like to help me, then you can do that in multiple ways. You can do that via YouTube membership, where you can get emotes, exclusive streams, Discord channel, and merch discounts. Then there is the Patreon, where you basically get most of those things, except you get short stories and free books as well. Yay! Then there's the Kofi, where in the shop you can get small audiobooks by me, and you can also get me to draw some emotes for you. If you like the look of my emotes, I can draw some for you. You could pay me to do that. And last but not least is the merch store, where you can get ebooks, first edition copies of books I've written, bookmarks, keyrings, t-shirts, a notebook, stickers, and a pillow with Chibi Me on it. It's the closest to eating a chibi version of me you can get. But that is all I have for you today. Once again, thank you so much for coming. Thank you. We will continue this book next week. I will be back tomorrow with what is questionable. I know I said potentially Minecraft, but there was a game I intended to play in October that I forgot about, because there was a lot going on. This game really needed to come out, and I needed all the time in the world on it. So I didn't really get a chance to play it, and then Elden Ring was doing well. But anyway, Slay the Princess. It is also a visual novel game, very sort of similar to what I've done, but better, because they have a better artist. And they also have the wonderful dulcet tones of... Why is the name gone from my brain now? Magnus Archives. Jonathan Sims. That's it, Johnny Sims. He's so good at reading a book to you. Yes, it's very cool. Like I said, if you like him, pick up Magnus Archives podcast. It's really good. Very good horror series. I haven't finished it, I won't lie, but I have really enjoyed it. My tones are pretty dulcet though. They're not. Well, you guys can find out if you think my tones are more dulcet than Jonathan Sims. We'll find out probably tomorrow. I don't know. Like I said, my schedule will be out tomorrow, and you'll know then. But currently, I don't 100% know what it's going to look like. I would also like to finish Golden Idol as well. I think we were pretty close to the end of that. But that's tomorrow's surprise. Either that, I will be streaming tomorrow. I don't know what exactly it'll be. But I'll see you then. I had fun. I hope you had fun. This has been Brand New Smith. I'm the Finn Library. Goodbye. Bye. 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 Whee.